Hello, 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 and welcome to UFOs Seriously Live. My name's Alejandro Rojas, and thanks for joining me once again. As you can see, I'm testing out again something new. A new setup, a little bit of a different angle, a different lens, trying to get that perfect look. But I really like this look. This looks pretty cool, so I might stick with it. The only issue is I'm doing a very high resolution type of thing, so it's high quality, but it might be too much for streaming. So hopefully we don't have bitrate issues. We will see down the line. But anyway, you're here to talk UFOs, and that's what we're going to be doing here today. We're going to be talking about UFO news, also some of the space news. That's what I do. I write about space and other things, so we'll talk about some of my latest there. But there's a lot of UFO news to get to and some interesting stuff. And then, of course, there are those of you in the chat who have questions. So we'll definitely get to your questions as time goes on. And this will be a lot of fun. But to start off, let's get over to... my browser, I'm sorry. I'm having a browser issue here, which is quite annoying. Okay, so let's get you over to the browser. Here's what you guys will see what I'm talking about here. I don't know, maybe one of you know this. When you go to full screen, you can't see the tabs, so you can't go back and forth from your tabs. I thought you could do that. So that's what I was struggling with. But first, let's look at, so this is openminds.tv for those of you who are new. This is our website. You can see that I'm relabeling a lot of stuff. Some of you may notice in the logo in the upper left, credible UFO news and information, because that is our goal, and that's what makes us different from other groups. Not to say that, I'm trying to say that everybody else is full of it or something. It's just that there's not a lot of places that are more careful about credibility and distinguishing the difference between credibility, sources, credible sources, and speculation. Speculation is great. Speculation is fine. That's just not my thing. Everybody can speculate. And, there are a lot of people in this field. That's all they do is speculate. And then they go up and they want to talk and tell you, here's what I think is going on. Okay, fine. But I really feel that, many of you as my listeners, in fact, especially the listeners to Open Minds podcast or the people who watch UFO Seriously Live, are very well educated, and I would rather hear some of your speculation than the speculation of a lot of the people out there who are just connecting wild dots out of the blue and going all over the place. Really, if we want to find truth, we've got to put together good pieces of data to figure out what's going on. And what's funny, though, at the same time, some of these people who are speculating and real fringe and out there could be some of those people are right. And, they've figured it out, or at least their speculation turns out to be right. I mean, look at the lottery. What you're doing is you're guessing randomly at what might be the case, and people win. So, there might be some people who have it right. Or some people are being visited by some sort of entity or something and being told what's going on, and they've got it all right. But, just to get to that point, and one of the reasons that I don't talk a lot about, channelers and people are claiming to talk to aliens is that there are a lot of those people. I've talked to these people on a regular basis, and, there are so many of them with so many different stories that it's hard to know, why would you believe one story over another? So that's my beef with that. And that's why we got to stick with some of the good information. And a couple of things here I want to show you, just so you know. Up here is people who may have donated. So there's a link down there that says tips. That's what this one is. And then there's Super Chat. You can give money if you like. It's kind of a tip for the show. And that'll show up there if some people do that. There's a cool little graphic that happens here when people subscribe. And here is our most recent subscriber, Aloysius Ryan. Interesting name. Very cool name. Maybe some of you know the origins of that name. Perhaps it is extraterrestrial in nature. You never know. You never know. All right, let's get to some news and some stories out there. Lots of really cool stuff. So, openminds.tv, that's my news site where we cover a lot of UFO stuff, and we get cited actually by a lot of mainstream media. In fact, we were in a scientific journal today. We were linked by it's not like an official peer review journal, but it is essentially it's a blog about scientific journals, and we were mentioned in there, and maybe that will come up later, and maybe not. So we will get to that a little later as well. But one of the first things I want to show you here is my Patreon site. And don't worry, I'm not going to spend too much time asking you for money. And I'm not really asking you for money here. What I'm pointing out here is, of course, this site, you can give money. You can become a patron, and you give me like $1 a month or something like that. And then you get like discounts on things and some other exclusive content. So do that if you want. But if you don't want, or if you do that, this is also where I post a lot of my stuff. So you just saw openminds.tv. That's where I put the UFO stuff. But here, I put everything that I'm working on. So that's why I like to start here when we're doing the show. First of all, here's one of my latest kind of a brief article in the Den of Geek magazine. So Den of Geek is a website I write for. Some of you might be familiar with it. They're really kind of mostly focused on entertainment, but I mostly cover space and science and entertainment. But I recently did this article, so I think this is a lot of fun, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. So essentially, this is about space tourism. Who are the people that can take you to space? Like right now, if you wanted to buy a ticket to go to space, who are you going to go to? When are they going to get there? And how much is it going to cost? Those are all really important. And there's some big guys out there. There's SpaceX, of course. You might not be familiar with the name Space Adventures, but they've actually are the only company who have put people in space and put space tourists in space. The only one. Soon there will be a bunch more. Possibly SpaceX will be in that loop. Blue Origin has some plans. A group called Worldview Enterprises. And of course, there's Virgin Galactic as well. And then Boeing is saying they might get in the mix as well. So there are a lot of interesting ways you could get into space, and that's what this article covers. Now, I'm going to do a separate video on my Alejandro Advantage YouTube page. It's another YouTube channel where I do kind of non-UFO stuff, and I've been doing space stuff there, and I'm going to do a video on this topic. So keep an eye out for that, and please do subscribe to the Alejandro Advantage. But here's another article I wrote recently. This is, let's go check it out. This is the SpaceX Dragon versus the Boeing Starliner, the rebirth of U.S. crewed spaceflight. So, essentially the way this, and this is a graphic that was custom made for my story here by Jessica Koynock, an artist and illustrator for Den of Geek. Isn't that cool? So the gist of this story is that our contract with Russia to take us to the International Space Station is almost up. And ever since the space shuttle was canceled, we have to rely on Russia to take us up there. Well, April 2019 is going to be the end of the contract, according to the Russians. And according to NASA, they have actually bought a couple seats on Soyuz spacecraft up until November 2019. So that sounds like a lot of time, but when you're developing extremely complicated technology, especially technology that needs to get humans safely from here to the International Space Station, any little mistake, any little issue will slow things down. And possibly there's also, if you're going too fast, you could create some safety issues. So it takes time to do this. The two companies that have been tasked, essentially who are the forerunners for doing this, are SpaceX and Boeing. Now, Boeing has created every manned spacecraft to date. So, of course, they have a huge advantage. Their budget for their Starliner also is much larger. It's something like, it's twice as long. It's $40+ billion that they were given from NASA, whereas SpaceX got 20. So everybody was thinking, Starliner's going to get there first, but guess what? They as of now, it looks like SpaceX is going to get there first. There's also some other cool things. I'm going to do a video on this as well. Like, for instance, some of the differences. This right here is a trunk. That's what they call it. So here's where the people are in this capsule. It can hold up to 7 people. This is a SpaceX Dragon. And it's got this trunk here. This is where the solar panels are stored, but also it's a lot of extra space for extra cargo to take up to the ISS. So it's one advantage there, let alone they're much cheaper to get up there. The Starliner is going to be flown up there on an SLS rocket. That's a new rocket being developed by Boeing and some partner companies. And whereas the SpaceX Dragon is going to be taken up by a SpaceX Falcon. But just some of the differences here, and you can read more about that in this article. And again, keep an eye out for my channel, The Alejandro Advantage, because I will be making a video on this as well. Because if you're interested in space and space transport and what's going on with SpaceX and all of this stuff, I find this stuff extremely interesting, and hopefully you do too. So one note about Boeing and a tie into the UFO world is that Bigelow Aerospace is actually a partner with Boeing. In fact, when Boeing announced, the first person to announce the name of Boeing's capsule, human manned capsule to take people back to space, was Robert Bigelow in a press conference where they were talking about the future of space and what they want to do. Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace was there at this press conference and was the first to announce the name, the SCT, or the Crew Space Transport 100 Starliner, which is the name of the Boeing craft, just to show how close they are. Now, why Robert Bigelow? If you don't know who Robert Bigelow is, he's essentially this billionaire from Nevada. And the reason he ties into UFOs is that he was given $22 million to investigate the UFOs and the paranormal and for the government, which he did. He's really into UFOs. On 60 Minutes not too long ago, he said he thinks aliens are already here. When the interviewer asked him, aren't you nervous about saying that? Isn't that going to hurt your credibility? And he said, I could give a damn, kind of like Gone with the Wind type of moment there. But he's really a big player in the space industry. Some people have said that statement that I just made, that Bigelow and investigated UFOs and got this $22 million and all of this. There have been some people, interesting enough. The UFO field is so weird, and we're going to get into some of these stories here soon. But they've called into the question the veracity of these claims. These claims were made in the Skinwalker documentary, which I've talked about before, which essentially journals the investigation by Bigelow Aerospace of this paranormal location, and where the scientists were taken to investigate the paranormal phenomena going on this ranch in Utah. Well, here's why we know that the government was involved. There are a couple sources for this. The main source is George Knapp, and he is a investigative journalist in Las Vegas. He wrote the book Hunt for the Skinwalker. So he has been given access for literally decades into the investigation into the Skinwalker Ranch. I did an interview recently for the Open Minds podcast where he shared more information than he ever has. And he talked about how he had to keep many, many secrets and still has to keep some secrets about the ranch and the investigation. But one of the things he could come forward on is the government's involvement and how the government was involved. So he's a very credible source. One of the people he's interviewed for this information is Harry Reid, a senator, the former majority leader. And so, of course, he's very credible. And then also Luis Elizondo, who used to run this program for the Pentagon. So I don't see, I think no matter who was writing this, when it comes to journalism, those are very, very substantial sources, and certainly the type you can kind of hang your hat on. Of course, you always want to be skeptical and look for any deception or misquoting or misrepresentation. But so far, we haven't seen any of that. And especially someone like George Knapp is very careful about verifying all of his claims. The other outlet that we have, of course, is the New York Times. In December, the New York Times is the one who broke this story about this Pentagon UFO program to begin with. And of course, so there's some sourcing there as well. So it's fairly substantiated. I'm not sure necessarily why people are calling everything into question and really getting kind of rude about these guys doing their UFOs investigations. So that's the Den of Geeks story. Otherwise, of course, last week's UFO Live, Martin Willis and I went over the latest UFO news as well in this podcast. And in this podcast, what I do here is this Pentagon story, of course, is very big, that they used to have a UFO program. And essentially, Bigelow, along with Luis Elizondo, who ran that Pentagon program, I shouldn't say Bigelow, but members, people who investigated the paranormal with Robert Bigelow, and others, mostly former government people and former intelligence, have gotten together with Tom DeLonge, the rock star, the former head of Blink-182, to create this To the Stars Academy, where they're investigating UFOs and UFO claims, and which I think is very exciting. And they are making a lot of news because they're actively getting some stuff done. And in this latest podcast, Martin and I talk at length also about one of their latest articles, which I feel is, I don't think it's deceptive. I don't think it's vague on purpose, but I don't understand the purpose of why they wrote this article necessarily. I don't think it has a clear message, and I think it could. I think why they wrote this article, it's an article about some material they're looking into that could be anomalous and is allegedly from a UFO. It has magnesium and zinc and bismuth, and they're in small layers. Some of you may be thinking, hey, this sounds familiar. That's because I believe they don't name it, but they do say this is something that's been out there and debated for decades. And I'm certain that what they're referring to is what's called Art's Parts. So Art Bell, of course, he was a host for Coast to Coast AM, the big paranormal radio show that you hear in the middle of the night, that now George Norrie hosts, and sometimes George Knapp, that Las Vegas reporter that I referred to earlier, who wrote the book on Skinwalker. He hosts it occasionally as well. But Art Bell was called once and sent some material by a listener who said that, this material came from Roswell. But this person's anonymous. We don't know where this material came from. So already that's kind of an issue. They review kind of the nature of the material a little bit, but it's a very short article, and they don't go into the history of the material. And that frustrates me, maybe because as a journalist, that would be the number one thing that I would do, is go into investigate what do we know about this material and how it was obtained. And that should be, the heart of your story. That should be the root of the story, even before you get into the technical nature of the material. And they didn't do that. So I'm curious. I would imagine that they have researched the material's history. I don't think they're trying to be elusive by not sharing that information, but it certainly can give the appearance that they are not sharing information because they're worried it'll damage the credibility of their research. But, either way, you've got to do that. You've got to give the background. That's just vital. It's ethical, but it's also, actually lends credibility to your investigation, that you're not hiding anything. And at one point, should they determine that this material is anomalous or is mysterious, they're going to have to prove that to a larger audience. And so then they're going to have to come, include the history of this. In fact, one of the recent members of To the Stars, Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan, he's no longer with me as of recently, from what I understand, but he got in trouble for working he got criticized highly by his peers because he did some research on this alleged, it was a carcass, on this carcass that, this UFO researcher, Dr. Stephen Greer, thought was an alien. I don't know if he really thought it was an alien, or I don't know. But for whatever reason, he thought it was an alien. Anyway, Dr. Nolan looked into it, did some studies on it, determined it was human. Surprise, surprise. By the way, this happens often in the Atacama Desert in Peru. It's a very dry desert, and carcasses are preserved there well. And every couple years, or every few years, someone digs one up or finds one and says it's an alien, and sure enough, it's not. This particular carcass had a whole history where it had already been examined. It also had a whole history of, where it came from and everything. Well, Dr. Nolan essentially in his group said, we didn't know the history and we thought it looked weird, so that's why we looked into it. And they've been highly criticized for not looking into the background, and they've even been blamed of being deceptive. I don't think Nolan was being deceptive. I've interviewed him on this, and I think has a genuine interest in the paranormal. But that's an example of where you lose a lot of credibility. You could get in a lot of trouble if you're not reviewing, the whole history of these things. So let's look at the chat update. Roswell is just the show. You need to add. I need to take Art Bell's place. Cloud to Ground says, thank you very much. That is such a kind thing to say. Someone said, I still listen to Art Bell's archived episodes. Yeah, Art Bell was great. He was really cool. So I can see you doing that. Someone else said Corbell was talking about a giant wolf bear thing bigger than an SUV walking on two legs in front of native cops. That's interesting. I don't know. I'm sure I know who those native cops are. In fact, I live here in Arizona, and there are these two Navajo cops, John Dover and Stan Milford. See, they're my buddies. In fact, I had an interesting sighting with them. But one of them's retired, John. The other one still is a ranger on the Navajo Nation. And they take paranormal investigation seriously. So if they get a call, something weird's going on, they'll go out there. And they say they've experienced a lot of strange stuff, including real skinwalkers, they say. And a skinwalker is a Native American legend. It varies a little bit from tribe to tribe, I think. But, it's a witch who has learned these skills, a bad witch, to change into an animal. And they say they've seen, people transform and all this weird stuff. So, really interesting. So, yes, Corbell talks about if I were standing up, one of the stories, and you'll see this on his video, and it's essentially he didn't discover this story. It's in the book, Hunt for the Skinwalker. But, and that's, the researchers found this when they investigated. But Jeremy Corbell is the filmmaker who's sharing all of this great information in his great documentary, Hunt for the Skinwalker. I highly recommend it. But yeah, if I was standing up, they said it was about shoulder height, this large dog-like creature that the residents of this ranch claimed to have seen. In fact, that was one of their first strange incidents where this thing was coming towards them. They, of course, got scared, but it got close, and it seemed to be docile, so they pet it. It attacked one of their cows. They kept shooting at it. They had to get this big elephant gun. A chunk of its flesh came off, and it finally went away. And it didn't seem fazed at all by this whole experience. And so, yeah, one of the many really weird stories that is part of the Skinwalker Ranch. How many of Bigelow's guys got followed? I don't know. They were working with Defense Intelligence, so I would imagine they probably wouldn't get followed. But you never know. From what I understand, there were Russians around trying to figure stuff out. So who knows? That's interesting. They were at the conference one year. Yes, they were at the International UFO Congress. So Alejandro, in your opinion, what is the most credible UFO sighting? It would be hard to say which one in particular. You know what came to mind? 3 sightings came to mind. That's how my weird ass mind works. But anyways, came to mind at first. First of all is, and this is on my mind because I want to have this part of one of my upcoming podcasts, which is with David Marler. So David Marler in Wyoming at the Devil's Tower UFO Festival that we're at recently, he did a talk on the Battle of LA. He's also done this talk at the UFO Congress. So you can actually go to the UFO Congress and look in the video on demand and see his talk from a couple years ago. But I want to bring him on to talk about it because actually the Battle of LA in 1942, of course, this is during World War II, there were something flew over LA. Of course, they thought it was the Japanese. They shot at it a bunch and it disappeared. However, there is a lot more to this case than people realize, and that make it very credible. So that's a great one. Also, going back on old cases, 1952 over Washington, D.C. Now, the picture you see out there, despite what you'll hear from some people, is not real. There's a picture of these lights over Washington, D.C. There was no picture taken during the time where these lights were really seen in Washington, D.C. There's a popular image out there from a documentary that was created to mirror what had happened. And there's another photo that is actually flares from the lights below that is often cropped and said that that's it, but it's not. So there are no images, unfortunately. The best resource for this case and for many other the most credible UFO cases you'll find down below in the links. If you look at Ruppelt, his book down there on a report on flying saucers, and he actually was the head of Project Blue Book, which was the third and last UFO investigation. He was the first chief of that project, but in his book he goes over the previous projects as well, because essentially that's how it started. He was asked by his boss, a general, to take a look at what is the UFO situation with the Air Force and their investigation and give him a summary. When he did that, they said, well, he recommended we should keep looking, and they said, okay, well, you're the guy, you're heading up this group. So he started looking, and his book is great because it's got a lot of credible cases. But it shows how his people, Air Force people, were at National Airport in Washington when these UFOs were seen. They were tracked on radar, jets were scrambled, and the objects took off. So that's a very credible sighting. However, there's a very similar sighting that is much more recent that I feel is probably the most credible recent sighting, and that is 2004 San Diego, the USS Nimitz strike group. So this story has been around and been investigated, but it was also part of that December New York Times article that revealed the Pentagon had been looking into UFOs. And since then, George Knapp, who we mentioned earlier, has released a report, a military report on that sighting. And again, here we have objects being seen for days. Similar description of, they call it the Tic Tac. That's their nickname. In fact, one researcher I know called to find out about, this sighting, and they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he said, it was a Tic Tac. They described it looking like a Tic Tac. And he said, oh, the Tic Tac UFO. I know exactly what you were talking about. This was like a Navy PR guy or something like that. So it's something that, people are aware of, and it was a big deal. So this was one of the cases that was investigated by this Pentagon program. And so when the New York Times article came out, a video from that investigation came out, and then George Knapp has since then released a more full report on that. But that is an amazing site. I don't know others. Chicago O'Hare in 2008, there was a really good one. Lots of really, really interesting ones. I really want to hear and learn more about the gimbal video. That craft was amazing, somebody said in the chat. Tim. Hello, Tim. I didn't say hi to everybody, too. Hey, Renee. Hey, Summerled. Hey, Joe. Hey, Nolbert. Hey, Cartola. Hey, Derek. Hey, Tim. And Central PA Mountain Rider says George Knapp is a good reporter. He's amazing. He's one of my favorite. I love this guy. But anyways, what did someone else? I really love the gimbal video. So the gimbal video is another one of these videos that has been released by To the Stars. Supposedly released by the DOD, at least according to Elizondo, which I'm sure he's right. He's shown, some people have seen a document showing that the DOD did release these things, but this document has not been released yet, unfortunately. However, I've verified with several different sources that, they did really release this material. But either way, these FLIR images are from F-18s capturing UFOs. And you could see this at To the Stars. So, who pilots the Tic Tac UFO? The Pleiadians? I don't know. That's a very good question. Are they even piloted by beings at all? Are they robotic? Are they probes? That might be what we would do. So, I don't know. That's a very good question, my friend. So let's go into the news. That's kind of a news sort of noise there that I made. All right, so let's check out the latest UFO news. That's what we're here for, right, peeps? Okay. I might have to... So this is the site, openminds.tv. Now, I just posted the news before I came on. So, you're going to have to look at me again. By the way, tell me what you think of, the set and everything and how things look, if you're getting any lag or anything like that, because I'm doing my best. Now, I've been able to figure out a lot, and, all of this is so complicated. I'm using this software called OBS. You may or may not be familiar with. There's a lot of nuances there to get, everything synced just right as far as sound and video. And then I'm using my GH3 DSLR camera. There's the camera, the lenses. I had to figure out how to get that connected to the computer. It's all very, very complicated. But I think I've got a really cool setup right now. The one thing that isn't easy is making sure there's no lag or trying to do my best to set things up where there's no buffering on your end so it looks really smooth. I don't know if that's even possible, but I'll continue to work on that. But your feedback is very helpful about what you're seeing, if things are too dark, too light, if you see any aliens in the background or UFOs cruising by as we're on our space station here, let me know. I just got distracted. Oh, here is the thing, is that it takes some time to update that information at times. You know what I could do? But, what I'll do is I'll tweet or I'll Facebook the link to those, and it'll let you look at them. It just, for some reason, it's because there's this proxy, firewall thing that we have, and so it can take some time to actually pop up on the website. But here we go. Here we go. UFO news. UFO headlines. October 4th. 10-4. 10-4, good buddy. 2018. So here's some stories, recent stories. Let's take a look. This one is Devon Live. This is an interesting one. Gotta take it. Have you ever used Invictus? Blah, blah, blah. Skip this survey. This is a long one. 10 questions. Are you local? Normally I try to answer them. I don't know why. Always trying to be nice. The strangest and most convincing UFO sightings which baffled Devon residents. So this is an interesting story. What they say here is that a recently released document showed some of the sightings in their area. Now, this is from the UK, and the UK actually released, allegedly, all of their UFO files, ending, and then in 2008, they actually had a UFO Research Organization. We're going to talk about this a little more, too, in a minute. But they actually had an official government UFO Research Organization for many, many years, from the 70s to 2008. I have a story on it somewhere, too. I can't remember where, because it's really interesting history. But what happened was, I go over it in a talk that I have, and you can find this on YouTube, actually. I did this talk for the local MUFON government agency UFO programs. These are official government UFO research organizations. And I went over the United States, the UK, and Canada, but a little bit, even though those are very old. Those all ended, except for UK only ended in 2008. But I also go over the other countries that currently have programs open, and there are 5 or 6 government-backed UFO research organizations out there. The British one ended in 2008, and at the same time they had said they released all of their UFO files. We since found out there were a dozen or so they didn't release. They've been saying for years they're going to release them. They released a handful of them. I can't remember if it was earlier this year or last year. They really didn't say much, but they still have yet to release the last ones, and nobody's quite sure why it's been taking years for them to do this. So these files, their files actually have been out there for a while. However, what Devin did here, or the paper, is essentially put in a Freedom of Information Act request in order to get their local UFO sightings, and they got quite a few. So here you can see them listed, and they even went into some of the details of what they call amazing UFO sightings in the sky over Devon. So here's a bunch of sightings. I'll read one to you. Let's read. There was a triangle one. Here we go. Ooh, triangles are cool. Let's see what this one says. Strange flying objects were reported spotting. I was going to try to do an English accent, but I don't want to do that because I'm not very good at it, to be honest. Even though sometimes I pretend to be. If I talk to British people, I don't know, are any of you like this? When I talk to people with accents sometimes, especially if you spend a lot of time with them, I start to adapt that accent. So people have been talking about Meghan Markle recently and how she's using an English accent. But she's around English people all the time. She's living in the frickin' palace. I'm sure it would only take me a few days to be doing the same thing. I think that it would be impossible for me not to adapt or adopt a British accent just intuitively if I lived in England for more than a few weeks. So I don't blame her for that. But since I haven't been in England for a long time, and I haven't really talked to many British people lately, I'm not going to attempt to do the accent, although that would be fun. Essentially what this one says is strange flying objects were reported spotted hovering around in the South Devon skies in December 2008. Witnesses claimed to have seen a flying saucer-type craft with flashing red lights in the skies over Teignmouth and Newton Abbot. I'm sure I said that wrong. The first sightings were over the skies of Newton Abbot and Kingstonton. John Rayner of Kingstonton said, I could see circular objects following each other up through the sky. They were red lights with a kind of orangey colored bottom. Well, I thought maybe this would be a triangle craft, but it's not. But the point is, that is not that different than your average MUFON report, right? The Mutual UFO Network, the largest UFO research organization in the country. Let me show you something here too about MUFON. Is that if you go to MUFON.com, you can actually go to track UFOs and you can see the last 20 UFO reports here. So these are what was reported. Most of these are from today. you can also go to a live UFO map. So as the reports come in, they are put on this map, and you can change, the numbers, and you can find some stats. So look at this. Whoa, 90,000 UFO sightings. I believe they're just using MUFON information. So pretty interesting. Last year, almost 5,600. Last month, they were 375. Last week, 57. So this is pretty cool. Been around for a while. But this is where you could see. So what I'm talking about, though, is that this article is very similar to the sightings that you could read on the MUFON site. And this may be something that you and I are very well aware of. But that's what's cool about this article, is that they're calling these sightings amazing because they, the reporters, along with the general public, are not aware that there are, some pretty credible UFO sightings being reported on a regular basis. We just saw nearly 6,000 last year. If only 10% of those are genuinely strange or mysterious, that is 60. No, that would be 1%. No, 6,000. That is 60. I'm sorry. Brain fart. But that is 60. A lot of you, people aren't good at math, so a lot of you were like, oh, yes, sounds right to me. But that would be 60. But still, 60, even if it was 30, even if it was 1, I mean, all you need is one anomalous occurrence where something is very credibly had seen, like in the Nimitz or in many of these skinwalker incidents in Utah. I mean, that's all you need to show that there's some sort of genuine phenomena happening out there. So that's why I like this article, because it's making people aware that, holy cow, these things happen right here in our own backyard here in the UK. PC Magazine, this is a good one. So this is, we'll read this here. Ahead of World Space Week, we talked to SETI Institute Chief Bill Diamond about the search for extraterrestrial life and why the idea of aliens coming from Earth to destroy us is absurd. Quite frankly, I find that concept absurd. So, according to Mr. Bill Diamond, here's why aliens will probably come in peace. So I thought this was interesting. We talked a little bit about this last week because this topic was brought up last week about, hey, should we be worried about, sending any messages to space because the aliens are going to come get us and they're going to eat us and kill us and it will be terrible. Well, not everybody agrees with that. In fact, most scientists, most theoretical physicists disagree with that. That's not what this article is about, though, funny enough. Actually, the last part, it's a Q&A. The last question, he gets into it a bit, but that's about all. But it is an interesting article because they talk about, SETI just essentially is talking about why aliens are out there and why we need to try to see if we can find them and the different ways we go about it. Some of us would argue that, and I've even heard of a astronomer say they feel that, like a famous astronomer, that they think MUFON's going to find an alien before these guys are because they just aren't, which is part of this article. This article talks about how we're going dark. In other words, we're already sending signals out and we're so bright, we're so visible to any other, civilization out there that would be very easy to find. So people like Stephen Hawking, who were concerned that if the aliens find us, they're going to kill us or hurt us, so we shouldn't send messages out there. He did understand this, but, it's too late. We've already been sending stuff out. But this scientist is talking about how we're going dark, at least in the sense that we're moving away from radio. We're moving away from using these types of signals that go out to space very far, and we're using things at networks and things that are closer, so we're not as bright as we were, or at least not as we're not as loud, I suppose, or visible. Although, who knows what an alien civilization would probably have gone dark a long time ago because they're not going to use those sort of technologies. So, It is an interesting article. But essentially, here's his sentence as to, well, I'll read you this part because it is interesting. Finally, I have to ask this. If a craft from outer space came down and a door opened, are you so curious that you would get aboard? Yes, I would. Me too. The reason I would do this, answered the scientist, is that I think we'd have some understanding of intention long before the opportunity came to get on board the craft. I think this is an interesting discussion. Any civilization that has the technology to travel across interstellar space with biology on board, as traveling that distance is hard for biological beings to survive by default, is vastly more advanced than we are. So the likelihood they traveled across interstellar space just to drop by Earth to, quote, have us for dinner, unquote, is a rather absurd notion. So yes, I'd be curious to meet them. Isn't that an interesting answer? Let's go to YouTube. Let's see what you guys are saying. So I think that's a really interesting answer. One thing for the reason that, Close Encounters. I did that video from Devil's Tower of some of us UFO researchers talking about the movie Close Encounters. And that's what happens at the end of that movie, Roy Leary decides to go on the craft with the aliens. And it's kind of scary because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what they're going to be like. More recently, there was a movie... Amy Adams is in it. Anyone in the chat? I can't remember the name of the movie, but where, these big octopus-looking alien type things come in this big craft, and it's kind of nerve-wracking because you don't know what's going to... Somebody said I have a tall, dark figure behind me with a knife. No, I don't. I still have space. But that would be nerve-wracking. So it's an interesting thought this gentleman has, that if they're going to send biology to our planet, Arrival, that's the movie, thank you so much, that we most likely wouldn't need to be worried. But what would you guys think? Tell me in the chat or right below. Would you be scared? Let's say this craft landed and they were beckoning you, hey, come on board, check it out. Would you go or would you not? Would you be as confident as this SETI gentleman that these creatures were benevolent and it would be okay to go onto the ship? What do I think about flying humanoids like the nun? No, somebody just wrote about the nun or something. I have not seen any of the flying humanoid videos or pictures that I think are that great. However, I don't know. Having said that, there are cases such as the Flatwood Monster, which is going to be something that's going to be highlighted in this Project Blue Book television show, which I think is an interesting case. The Little Green Men. This is part of my Steven Spielberg lecture, which I'm going to be doing at AlienCon in Baltimore in a few weeks. But it's also part of my Strange Alien Cases talk that I don't think any of these are... Well, you can see them on video on demand because I've done them at the UFO Congress, right? At least I've done the Strange Alien Cases. But there's a case of Kelly Hopkinsville. That was a very interesting case. So, I don't know. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Aliens found Earth many thousands of years ago. Please stop ignoring the evidence of their presence. What evidence, Mr. John? That's the whole problem. And what you may see as evidence, I think what we have to realize here is that what Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I don't know that was a very good impression at all, but it was a very important statement. Incredible, claims require incredible evidence, or extraordinary claims. And so, I don't think we have that extraordinary evidence yet, my friend. So I would love to know what you feel is extraordinary evidence. They don't beckon you, they grab you, is what someone said. So, yeah, some of you feel pretty concerned. This crowd here seems pretty scared of the aliens. Someone said here, no, we are not doing well with the hate and murder. Yeah, we are still, someone said, we are just bugs under a microscope. Look on. See, I think that you guys, quite frankly, have some more sophisticated answers than Mr. SETI over here. Really, I think these SETI guys could do with some more brainstorming about stuff, because you make some great points. Let's say that they can get here. Then, oh, sorry. There's a person in here who's getting in trouble. Someone's starting to be, please don't get out of line and act goofy. So, yeah, someone said, well, if they wanted to kill us, wouldn't they? That's a very good point. But someone else said, you know, we're just under a microscope to them. I think that the concern would be our sense of you know, emotional state or whatever, is that going to be that big concern of theirs? And here's an example. What we do with animals. Because what is described by people who claim to have extraterrestrial experiences or alien abductions are very similar to what we do with animals. We go out into nature, we snag them, we do what we want with them, and then we put them back. That would be extremely traumatizing and not nice, not good. But they may feel that what they're doing is more important than our feelings or how we feel about what's happening to us or what they're doing to us. So, I don't know. Some really good thoughts. You guys have some good ideas there in the chat. So, let's see. Next. This is cool. So, this is another interesting interactive map. Tracks every U.S. alien sighting since 1940. No, it doesn't, but it's still cool. Let me show you what I mean. So, this is regarding this website, and I want to actually take us to it. And they caught wind of me sharing this information, and they actually have been really cool, and I'll go show you in a second. So, here we go. Casino.org. So casino.org, what they're doing, of course, is they're looking at the odds. What are the odds that this is going to happen or that's going to happen? And here, they're looking at what are the odds that you're going to see a UFO, because you can bet on stuff like this. I don't know where you go. I guess you go to the sports book and you say, oh, I bet that I'm going to see a UFO. I don't know. Someone will take that bet. But essentially, what these guys have done is come up with the odds. And the way that they did that was by creating this map of where UFO sightings occur. Now, the issue I have with this map is that they're not telling us where the information came from. According to that website, the information goes all the way back to the 40s. However, they say their total UFO sightings are 3,900. Well, as we saw from the MUFON reports, there were nearly 5,600 last year alone. So that's a very low number. Not only that, as we saw on that MUFON map, there are over 90,000 reports that they've collected. So this would only be a small percentage. But the way that they've displayed the information is really cool. So you can see the odds. And I don't know, I'm not a gambler. So if I understand this correctly, it's, you take it... It's essentially 1,247 to 1 is how you read this, that you'd see a UFO in Alabama. And this may be just the Alabama total sightings, actually. Let's see. Yeah, that's what that was. So maybe it's accurate. Then we go to Alaska. Alaska, if I understand, 313 to 1. They've had 2,300. And you could also click the map, and you might have seen the UFO. So when you click the map, here's Arizona, and the UFO comes over Arizona. No, leave me alone. Go to Arizona or Nevada. Look, now it's at Area 51. Almost 6,000 sightings in Nevada. 520 to 1 odds that you'll see a UFO. So really fun, interesting map. It's also got some information here. You're most likely to see a UFO in Wyoming, according to these people. Interesting. Florida is the state with the lowest odds. And over 40,000 Americans have taken out alien abduction insurance. Isn't that terribly interesting? So really cool stuff. They also have a history of UFO sightings. Let's see. They don't have the Battle of LA, which I just was telling you about, but I'm going to get David Marler on. We're going to talk about it. Let's see if they have Washington, D.C. They do. Throughout the month, a series of UFOs were reported in Washington, D.C. So they do have that one. Let's see if they have, let's see how far up they go. Oh, they don't go. 2004, the Nimitz case I was talking about. Nope, they don't have the USS Nimitz on here yet. But still, some really cool, interesting cases. Very cool site. What times, or, here's the reports over the years, and then some more facts about UFOs. Really cool website here at casino.org. Remember, if you go to the UFO headlines here at openminds.tv, that you'll find that in the interactive map news.com link. So really cool one. Next story, Newsweek. NASA's 60th anniversary. Why haven't we found aliens yet? So this article is not that NASA's job is to look for aliens, but interesting enough, they do a lot of astrobiology, which is the whole search for extraterrestrial life. Mostly what they're looking for, of course, is microbes or something, and they're looking for the possibility of alien life, such as habitable planets. They're in the Goldilocks zones, or they're looking for water and oxygen and things like this that could cause life on other planets, or their moons right here in our solar system. And, I think many of them would agree, NASA scientists included, that we could even find life, at least in the form of microbes or something, on Mars, for goodness sakes. Who knows? What if we found it on the moon when these guys go to the moon again here soon? Amazing times we live in, my friends. But what this does talk about, which is interesting, is kind of the history of the scientific search for extraterrestrial life, including things like this, the Drake equation, which used to be not taken that seriously when I first got into UFOs. Now it's taken very, very, very seriously. Essentially, he was estimating how many civilizations could be out there, and the number is very, very, very large. And it used to be that, his calculations were off. There's so much he didn't know. But the more we learn, the higher the number gets as to the probability of the number of civilizations out there. So they get into that sort of thing. And it is a very interesting article, I think. Next, alien abduction. UFO book turns Mississippi man's life upside down again. Oh man, this poor guy. Who are they talking about? Calvin Parker. So some of you may be aware of this case. It's a very good case, often referred to as the Pascagoula case. It happened in 1973, which happens to be the same year that I was born, which also happens to be the year of very many cases with strange entities. Perhaps I was sired by one of them. Wouldn't that be interesting? They were messing with my mama and they did something weird with me and I'm part alien. Who knows? Who knows? But this happened in Mississippi. Calvin Parker. It is a very interesting, incredible case. So this gentleman, along with a friend, were fishing, essentially, I believe it's how it goes. And they saw lights on the water. They didn't know what was going on. Then they saw there was a craft there. This craft then landed, and these creatures came out that were really strange looking, and essentially took him. He was very scared. They put them back. They were scared. They ran to the cops. The cops put him in a room and recorded them talking to see if they could find, they figured as soon as they left the room, these guys would be like, ha ha ha, man, do we have these? We're pulling the wool over these guys. But no, what they heard were two frightened people who seemed to believe whatever they felt occurred to them had occurred. So it's a very popular case by that way. The book, and actually Philip Mantle from the UK, he runs Flying Disc Press. He actually asked us about it because we have the archives of the gentleman who wrote a book on this way back when. Philip Mantle then was able to get the rights to reprint that book, and then they're writing another one as well. However, the book, when it came out, I guess it's been really big, and that's what this story is about as well, how the book has been really popular, and I think that's his quote. He said, "It was shocking for me. I had no clue it was going to go over this well." He didn't know that there were going to be so many people interested in his case that happened all the way back in 1973. In fact, he says, it's been radio, TV, podcasts, and a few newspapers, probably about 300 interviews. I just did an interview on Fox News Waters World. They're calling every day. So Calvin Parker is already going to be speaking at the International UFO Congress. He was excited to do that and wanted to do that. He's says he doesn't want to be in the spotlight long. He doesn't want to talk about his case, but since his books got printed, he does want to come to the Congress. So more than happy to have him. Very excited to have him coming to the UFO Congress. I did warn him because he told me, hey, we're going to talk to Waters World. And I told him, you know what? They had come to the Congress before and made fun of people, including Travis Walton. He was very disappointed in that. And but however, I didn't see this interview, but Calvin and Philip Mantle seemed to be very happy with it. So I think it went well. But if you want to read more about Calvin Parker, then check out this story. And then, of course, you can also check out the book that was printed by Philip Mantle, reprinted. So that is Turning His World Upside Down Again. So check that out. Let's go to the chat. I was just trying to think of what would be a good way to, tell people what we're doing, which is going to the chats. And I like the way I did that. I'm going to do that again, like when we do this. I'm going to turn on the camera and then go. Let's go to the chats. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about. Cool story. That is a good one, isn't it? Do I ever come to Canada? Someone's asking. I have not. I've only been to Canada once. I believe it was, I can't remember. And this is probably true of many Canadian cities since many of them are cold. Winnipeg. I'm pretty sure it was Winnipeg. And they have lots of underground. So they have underground walkways so you could get to buildings and stuff. And there's shops and everything under there, which is really cool because it gets so cold that they want to walk around underground. Very cool. Reminded me kind of Penn Station in New York or something. Somebody said 144p is blurry but no buffer, so everything's going good there with that. Like the Tic Tac video points out, I am pretty sure that they know what we are thinking. Dirk Bonesteel. I hope that doesn't refer to anything naughty, Mr. Bonesteel. But you make an excellent point, my friend. So what Dirk is talking about here is in that report for the Nimitz UFO event I was talking about earlier, the one that happened in San Diego 2004. Captain Fravor, the jet fighter pilot, says he went in to get a closer look at this Tic Tac thing, and it knew what he was doing because it oriented itself towards him, which caused him some concern. And then it took off really quickly, gone. And that was the end of his incident. He called to the ship to say, hey, do you guys still have this thing on radar? And they said no. Later on, they came back and they said, we do have it on radar. Guess where it is? And he said, where? They said it's in your training zone. It's in your, essentially, where they are supposed to rendezvous, which is a random spot in the air where the jets are supposed to rendezvous to begin their training. And this object was there, indicating to them that somehow this object knew what they were doing, and it knew that location. It knew he was going to fly. So that is pretty weird if it actually knew what was going on. There are other instances of phenomena appearing to know what someone is thinking. When I was a MUFON UFO investigator, there were a number, and I think you can find them still, and if any of you all had experiences, you can let me know, is that people see them, and then all of a sudden they turn and move towards them. This is something that is reported very often. And of course, a lot of people blow it off and say, that is ridiculous. I mean, if there's a plane way out there and over a city of hundreds of thousands of people, how are they going to know when one person looks at them? I don't know. How would they know where to go, with this 2004 thing? I don't know. We just have to follow the data. And what's frustrating and what happens sometimes with scientific-minded people is that they hear something very difficult to understand, such as this, and so that damages the credibility and they dismiss the case altogether. That is the wrong way to do it, and that is unscientific. What you have to do is take the data. So, just note that people report this. Is it a real thing? Is it a coincidence? We don't know. What has to happen at some point is that someone takes all of the data, including people who have reported this, and correlates that data. So when it comes to sightings, how often does this happen? And is it more, the amount of this happening more than what would randomly happen? Is this a thing? Is this something that a lot of people are reporting? And maybe it is. Certainly they experience this sort of thing at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. In fact, I repeat this phrase over and over again, but Colonel John Alexander, and this is a phrase that other scientists that were on Skinwalker also I know because it's similar to what they've said, is the phrase that Alexander came up with was that it was a precognitive intelligence, or a precognitive sentient intelligence, meaning that it could think for itself and it also knew what they were going to do before they did it. Is that possible? I don't know. There are stranger things in this world, Horatio. That was such a terrible... I screwed up that quote very badly, but the point is that, there's just... The world is a very strange place, and science and scientists are finding on a regular basis, making discoveries of things we never could have imagined. So I don't think we should ever rule anything out. Anything's possible. We just need to keep looking and digging and researching to find those answers. All right. Any decent conventions in the Ohio area? Not really. Good ones, Cali and Arizona. Well, Alien Con, I think, is going to be mostly pretty good. I'm not sure what type of lectures that you like. I'm going to be doing 3 or 4. I think they want me to do 3 lectures and a panel or 2. So you can hear me talking a lot on this topic in Baltimore. Of course, that's not that close to Ohio. But no, unfortunately, I'm not sure. What I would recommend is you look for the local MUFON chapter, or the largest MUFON chapter in Ohio, because often different chapters will bring in speakers. And maybe you could even request that. But yeah, I'm not sure. All right, let's go back to the news. We got a couple more stories here. This one is recent daytime UFO sighting over Cape Sable Island being showcased at Sky Harbor UFO Museum on October 6th. This is an interesting marketing tactic. So, the Sky Harbor UFO event, one of the people involved with it apparently had a UFO sighting, and they videotaped it, and they say they're going to release this information at the event on October 6th when it starts. So, in a way, it's a little bit of a marketing thing because it's, they're trying to get people, hey, come look at our UFO video. This typically in the UFO field does not go over well because really every single time anybody's tried something like this, people go to this event and they are very underwhelmed by what is presented. That is the danger when you're doing something like this to draw people, is that it then, especially if press take the bait and press show up, if you wasted their time and you don't have something really good to show them, then they're going to write bad stories about you and about how you're a bunch of goofballs and how you tricked them into coming and you did this whole marketing thing. So it's a very dangerous thing to do. Of course, I'll keep an eye on this, but I'm skeptical and hesitant because, 99.9% of the videos and pictures that I am sent that are great are terrible. They're not great at all. So we'll see what happens, but it's kind of a funny tactic. But either way, this is a Shag Harbor UFO event that is documenting the October 4th, 1967. It's memorializing, essentially, the Shag Harbor UFO incident. And this was an interesting incident in that it was a object that was seen by a bunch of people over Shag Harbor. And let's go look at Shag Harbor so you know where it is. Bada ba, bada bead. And somebody was asking me about California, or I mean Canada. Here we go. Canada, baby. So there's Shag Harbor. Is this accurate? Yes. Nova Scotia. So what had happened is a bunch of people saw this craft. It went underwater. They tracked it. They looked for it. That's the extent of what I believe is the credible let me look for the file here. I'm going to show you something really interesting. This is fun. So that is the extent of the credible incident. Now, there are a lot of people who followed up and said, the craft was seen traveling underwater, that there were divers that went down and looked at it. I feel that a lot of this is less credible, and I don't find any credible background to some of this stuff, but the incident itself was pretty good. Here's what I'm trying to show you right now, is the Canadian UFO Files. This is a very cool site. So Canada came up with a database for their UFO sightings, and they keep building, they keep doing weird stuff with it. First of all, it used to be its own site, and then they had it archived. So you had to click this link to go to the archive. And now they have this thing, this kind of intro with this rivets. UFOs don't have rivets. What you guys talking about? So now they have this page, archived content, blah, blah, blah. So are you going to let us look at it or not? Oh, you know what? And it doesn't look like... This is a bummer. Here we go. So see, they keep making... This is so frustrating. Canada used to have a really cool site here. Here it is. Read more timeline. Oh, they've changed it all. It used to be easier and cooler, but it still looks like they've got the information here, which is pretty neat. So when we were talking about 1967 Shag Harbor. So it looks like these are just records. Let's see if I could get to map locations. Shag Harbor. Here we go. Yeah, they've changed all this up. It used to be much easier to get to, but it's still here, and it's got this cute little map. But here we go. Here is a summary from the Canadian government on the Shag Harbor case, which was really interesting. Here it does show the Department of National Defense did go conducted an underwater search, but they did not find anything. But it does talk about all of the different witnesses here seeing this object. And in fact, some of them were officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And our Canadian friend in the chat can tell us, I don't think they're all on horseback anymore. I think they did upgrade some of them to actual vehicles. But I don't know in 67 if they were on horseback or not, but when they saw this UFO. But the point is that there were, Royal Canadian Mounted Police that had seen this UFO as well. So it's a really great case. That's what this event is commemorating. And they are drawing people there by this alleged UFO sighting. So I'm going to go over and look at the chats, because I want to see. We have our Canadian friend in there talking about Canada. What about Canada? Oh, look. British Columbia in the house. Summer Lad. Hello. They sure aren't here for American light beer trash. Okay, that's funny. I don't like American light beers for mostly either. Let's see. Probably had microwaves and TVs. Canada rules, Cartola says. Apparently the aliens come there for their molten. So just people being funny, which is no problem. I like funny, obviously. All right. So let's get, I think we had one more story, and this is another fun one. Exclusive. Aliens at the Pentagon. Poster and trailer revealed. Oops. So this is Dread Central. Dread Central is mostly a horror movie site. And what they've done is they're talking about this documentary that's called Aliens at the Pentagon. And like this first paragraph says, that it says, okay, there's a movie Aliens in the Pentagon. It's not what you think. It's not aliens eating people at the Pentagon. But hey, don't leave the site. It's still, you might find it interesting. And the trailer does not do it justice at all. This trailer is a bunch of pictures and archival footage. I'll play it a bit. And it's really boring. I'm not a big fan of this trailer. See, I mean, it's very amateurish, and I mean, it's just archival footage with words on top of it. Nothing specific. Here's my problem with this trailer. It doesn't show what the movie's really about, and I don't think they draw people as well as they could, because I'm actually very excited about the content of this video for a couple reasons. What they're referring to as with aliens at the Pentagon is this UFO project that was at the Pentagon. So it's cool that they're the first to actually get a documentary out on this project, because really it's something. I get calls from production companies all the time. And they call and they're like, what do you know about Roswell? We want to do a show on Roswell. And I'm like, no. Here's a bunch of other really good cases, really cool stuff. And right now, you can get the scoop on the most important thing to happen in the UFO field in decades. And that is that the Pentagon has been investigating UFOs. We can look at the cases they've talked about. We can look at, how this came about. We can look at other great military cases. And they're like, yeah, we'll see. And then they try to run it up the flagpole, and they come back, oh, no, they want to talk about Roswell. Or if they know a little more, they want to talk about Rendlesham. No, this is the big story. This is what they need to focus on. And that's what's exciting, is that they're focusing on it in a way. The title's terrible. Aliens at the Pentagon. There's no aliens. Elizondo, all of these guys are very careful to say we had nothing to do with aliens. We were not looking into aliens. We were looking at advanced aerial craft that pose a threat. that we do not know where they come from or whose they are. That's the story. Here's what's cool about this, though, because I would say they're probably going to screw it up and misreport it and make a whole disaster out of it. No, because what this is really about, and this is what they should have focused on in the first place, in my humble opinion, they describe it here as an independent documentary that follows journalist Nick Pope, who used to run the British government's UFO project and is widely considered by many to be the world's leading expert on UFOs, the unexplained, and conspiracy theories. Now, a lot of people would say, Nick Pope, the leading expert? No way. That's because he's conservative, but more like me. He's more credible, focuses on the more credible information in this field. To me, actually, I would agree that Nick Pope is one of the best, if not the best. He's a very important person. Recently, well, I would say, it's very rare to have someone who worked for the government investigating UFOs out now advocating that they're a genuine mystery and highlighting the really good cases and sharing what he can about these incredible occurrences that he had been witness to or had investigated. Nick Pope, to me, is also a very great mind when it comes to speaking to the public. Here, I'll come tell you face to face how great I think Nick Pope is. But he is very good at sound bites. He's very good at being concise and informative and conveying a lot of very important information in a setting like this in a concise and articulate way. I think that trailer should have been more video of them following around Nick Pope and Nick Pope talking about this stuff, or, at his computer or otherwise. And this stuff about the Pentagon, they could have Nick Pope telling you this. And here's some stuff, for you people. This goes back to public speaking or a number of other things when it comes to journalism and what have you. Is first you establish the credibility of your presentation, then you share the information. So they had an opportunity here, and I hope they do this in further future trailers and in this documentary, is talk about Nick Pope and what he did, that he worked for the government investigating UFOs. Boom, you've established this extraordinary credibility, and you've just let people know that the UK, up until recently, was investigating UFOs. Then you have Nick Pope tell people that it's recently been revealed that the United States was also investigating UFOs secretly in the secret Pentagon UFO project. And boom, you really draw people in, and you have the best person representing the information in the best way. Nick Pope would not call this aliens at the Pentagon. He would probably choose a better title. Of course, they want to get clicks. It's kind of a clickbait, watch us type of thing. But I think you could do clickbait and be accurate as well. I mean, in journalism, that's what we're always striving to do. Granted, I'm not the best headline writer. I'm decent, I guess, but often my editors will change my headlines a bit to make them more exciting. But typically, they're still accurate. Not always, unfortunately, but typically. So that is what Mr. Nick Pope is up to, which is also very cool. I'm a big fan of Nick Pope, as you can tell in his work. And in fact, when we were able to get a video from Luis Elizondo, one of the very first interviews where we had our listeners and viewers ask questions, and we had him answer those questions, and To the Stars videotaped that and sent that to us. It was, about 35-minute video, which you can see on the UFO Congress YouTube page. But I first presented how we got here, then we showed Lou's video, and then at the end of our presentation at the Congress, after the video ended with the interviews, Nick Pope was on stage, and Nick Pope and I discussed what had happened, because in my opinion, there's no one with the expertise like Nick Pope to be able to speak to this hardly no one, because he did this job. He did what Lou Elizondo was doing. He was a government UFO investigator. That makes him, in my mind, very important and the best to speak to it. And I felt that that was a great presentation. Now, you can see Lou Elizondo's video from To the Stars at the UFO Congress YouTube page. And I'll do a card with that video so it'll pop up up here or up there, when this video gets launched. But you can also see the full presentation with me doing my introduction and Nick Pope and I discussing it afterwards on the video on demand. And you can find the video on demand at ufocongress.com. Just look at, or even at openminds.tv. In fact, let me show you. If you go to the top of openminds.tv, you'll see the UFO Congress video portal. And that will take you to the Congress video portal where you have hundreds of videos, including 2018 videos. Here's Robbie Graham. Here's Don Schmidt. For a couple bucks or a few bucks a month, you can have access to all of this. There's Dean Aliotto. Or if you want to just watch one video, you could go rent one video and just watch one. But if we go down here, right here, here is the video. And look, there's Nick Pope right there. And I, here, look, we could go make that a bigger picture. There's Nick, there's me, there's us discussing what Elizondo had just told us. So you can watch this video here. There's a free 7-day trial, $3 if you want to watch this video. It's only like $1 or $2 more to get access to all of the videos. And we have more. If you look at the categories, we have videos from 2018, 2017, 2016, a ton of videos here of UFO lectures for you to watch. So really good stuff. At the very least, go here at openminds.tv and look at this and peruse what's there, because I think you're going to be surprised by some of the names and titles that you see here, and pleasantly surprised when you watch some of these videos, because this is a treasure trove of UFO research here. So really good stuff. All right, chatters, let's check the chat. Let's see. UFO Congress has a few great videos I never saw before. That's for sure. We've got a lot of videos you've never seen before. And here's why. Because at openminds.tv, like we just went over in this video, we follow the news, what people are doing on a regular basis in this field, what is going on. So when Open Minds used to own the Congress, it no longer does. This attractive woman named Karen Brard now owns it, and I am like head over heels. She's my woman. So Karen, yeah, my girlfriend said it, bought it, and so she could be my boss, I guess, and now she bosses me around. But so she makes me still help her choose speakers and stuff. I don't get to choose them all. I've never got to choose them all, unfortunately. The conference I got to choose them the most is 2011. Go look at the lineup 2011. I think that the lineup in 2011 was one of the best lineups of a UFO conference anywhere. That's because I got to choose most of the speakers. But okay, I'm pausing here because according to YouTube, there's an issue. Can you guys see me? Oh, I think we're back. Okay. Sorry, guys. Buffer. Yeah, something happened, so there's a little buffer thing there. I will try to get it cut when we get the video out. So, anyway, where were we? What was the last thing you guys heard in the chat? Did you hear about, well, you had to have heard about the videos from the UFO Congress, because Dirk said there's some videos there he hadn't seen before. Okay, so some people, okay, Harry Monster, love the name. I'll get to your thing in just a second. But here, my point is that, what is my point? Oh, that the 2011 UFO Congress had the best speakers, in my opinion, because I got to choose speakers, but that there are a lot of great speakers in those videos that you guys got to check out. I don't know what's up with this buffering. It's very frustrating, because certainly my internet is great. I've checked the speed, so I'll have to play with that. But yeah, a lot of great videos in the video on demand. You might have heard me say that several times now, because I can't tell what you can hear or not because of this buffering thing that was happening. But I will go ahead and cut those out. Anyways, now I've totally lost my train of thought, and it's live. It's not like I can pause this. Oh, we'll get to some of your questions. So Harry Monster says, I'm beyond needing to be convinced of the alien existence. My interest is mostly in motivation of their visits and any science involved. Here's what I would say is that somebody said my cache is overloaded. I'd love to know what you mean by that. I don't know. So we'll see. I've got this is a mega host computer I'm on right now. It's a Mac Pro, one of the ones that look like a canister. Luckily, Open Minds, when we had a budget, we bought this amazing computer. But here's my point, is that even if you're beyond the idea of aliens being here and you're convinced that that is the case, here's why I think that what we do here at Open Minds and what we're doing right here on this video is still of interest and important. Because what we're doing is monitoring and journaling, what the mainstream is, how they're interacting and interfacing with this topic. So those of us who believe there's already a mystery now have the opportunity to be in front of this mystery as it unfurls itself upon the general public. And that's what we're witnessing. We get to be a part of that. We get to be ahead of the game because we know more, and we get to watch and have an educated kind of observation of this unique time where the public is kind of becoming more and more aware of what's going on there. There's more, and we're able to be a part of that. And I think that's really exciting. And we document that right here every week when we go over these stories and everything. So somebody said, I need to interview British Detective John Hansen. That does sound interesting. In fact, I get emails from him. I agree. Those open will probably get a better experience. So I'm not sure what Mr. Harry Monster meant by that. But what I mean, Harry Monster, is that even if you feel that you already are ahead of the game, that's what's exciting about today. It's not a bad thing to be ahead of the game. A lot of people get really frustrated and feel like, we already know aliens are here. Everybody doesn't know aliens are here. This is so frustrating. Everybody's so stupid. Well, this is the challenge. The challenge is, how do we get across this information that we may feel we know, or that we feel is credible and that the public needs to be aware of. And that's the challenge that Open Minds has taken on. And I believe, and we've had success doing this by taking the credible angle, being establishing credibility, having good sources, and sharing that with the public, because the public doesn't know about the Air Force's UFO Investigation Organization being in the control tower in 1952 and witnessing jets chasing light orbs flying around the sky, being caught on radar and not being able to catch them. The public doesn't know that the U.S. Nimitz entire carrier strike group had experiences with UFOs, and there are tons of witnesses that saw that, including the jet fighter pilots who chase these things. The public doesn't know this credible, great information. So this is our opportunity to share that information, to see in the form of media reports how they're digesting that. And I think this is a really exciting time. And I'm very excited that you all are coming along on this ride, because it's been an amazing ride. It keeps getting more and more amazing, and it'll continue to be amazing. I guess the last thing that I want to mention, which I didn't speak about before, are a couple To the Stars Academy updates. I guess the main one... let's see. Dirk says, I would like to see famous fraud segments with Doty, Bellic, Dulce, etc. Would you help clean up the subject? I've done my best. So, Dirk, you will find a very long and deep investigation that I feel is one of the most thorough investigations of the Doty, Dulce kind of stuff on my YouTube. It's essentially called a UFO disinformation or misinformation, something like that. And it's got Doty's. I don't think anybody's done it personally. I did FOIA requests. I got documents from the government. I use tons and tons of references that you can see on the site. I mean, dozens of them. So I do my best. So, Dirk, you'll have to watch that video, but it's really hard because there's so much junk that is out there that cleaning up the field is practically impossible. But that's why I'm using this word credible more often, because as people, and some of you are probably those people, who are looking for credible information, they saw this, they read this story in the New York Times, and they're like, oh my gosh, I thought UFOs were interesting, but what is going on? If you were just to go out on the internet to look at UFO stuff, as you know, you come across a lot of this mythos that's based on misinformation and junk. But I want to help people find, these small bastions of people who are sharing information that is credible and are more careful about how they find that information. Stanton Friedman uses this term, noisy negativists, and he's typically referring to skeptics. But I like to use that term in this field because the noisy negativists are usually the ones who are complaining about everybody and yelling, they got it wrong, they got it wrong. I know what's right. I'm the only one with all the answers. Pay attention to me, me, and, bashing everyone else. Those are typically the people that have the fewest answers. The people with the best answers are usually very humble, more softly spoken, and they're not in your face. You gotta hear me, you gotta listen to me, you gotta spend money on me, blah, blah, blah. It's the more humble people who are just out there to share information, so that usually have the best information, in my humble opinion. Now, I want to talk about one last thing, and I'm surprised nobody asked. I know if one particular person was in here, he would have asked. To the Stars, recently it was discovered that they had an SEC filing. And you know what? I'm going to look this up for you guys real quick. We like you. Thank you. I like you too. You like my funny face? Okay, we're almost done, but I just want to show you one more thing, and this I think is important. And it will make you more educated on this topic when you run across it, because most likely you will run across it. Boeing playing dirty. I didn't even tell you guys about that. So Boeing was essentially... it appears Boeing's playing dirty. So some stories, some op-eds have come out recently about SpaceX, criticizing them, and it turns out they're not accurate. It also turns out that they are misquoting, that they are generated by a PR company in Washington, D.C. that writes these letters that try to make them look like op-eds to get them into newspapers, and they lie about where they originally come from. And it's essentially corporations can hire these guys to get these op-eds out there to bash their competition to help them win contracts. That's not good. Jerkies. Okay, I can't find the link, and I apologize for that. Because, let me see, I can probably find it if I do this. Okay, here we go. Now, a lot of people are speculating off of this document that came out. And there are some interesting points, but this document is from To the Stars, and it's the SEC, so essentially the Security or Stock Exchange Commission, and here's some interesting, here's what people are pointing out. The bottom of page. I'm not sure this is the right one, which is unfortunate because I want to show you guys so you can be in the know. Yeah, so this is an older one. Oh, man. This is boring. Sorry. I might just give up and tell you, but I wanted to show you. Okay, I'm going to give up. Well, let me look somewhere else for it. So here, and this will be an education thing for you all as well. For those of you who are not there, let me show you something very cool. It's a little site called Facebook. If you haven't heard of it, just kidding. That's not, you've heard of Facebook. But I want to take you to this page, which is the Open Minds UFO News Group. It's a closed group because we keep out the boneheads and we nuke them if they're jerk-offs. So that we just have cool people who are nice to each other and not jerk-offs. Now, we encourage debate. Debate's fine, but here, and in fact, here's something we're debating about. So see, you see lots of stories here, lots of cool stuff, and we were all discussing something of importance here. Here it is. So everybody's talking about, To the Stars is losing all kinds of money. They're screwed. They're going to go under. Maybe. I don't know. And here's what the people are concerned about is this is the recent SEC filing report. And there's this note, going concern. The accompanying financial statements have been prepared on a growing concern basis, which contemplates the realization of assets and the satisfaction of liabilities in the normal course of business. I don't know what the heck that means personally. This sentence is more pertinent. The company has incurred losses from operations and has an accumulated deficit at June 30th, 2018 of $37 million. Whoa. And then there's this. These factors raise doubt about the company's ability to continue as an ongoing concern. That's unfortunate. But what could they have spent this $37 million on? Now, you're going to see people quoting this and talking about this sentence all over the internet. But what they didn't do is scroll down a little bit here to actually find what they're talking about. Is this not the right one either? It's in here. Oh, no. Scroll up a little bit. Sorry. And find out what they're talking about. And if you look in their paperwork for the money that they're talking about, here's the operating loss. $25 million in 2017, $5 million in 2018. So that's about $30 million. So where does it come from? Here it is. About 25 and 5. stock-based compensation. So a lot of people are like, what are they building them? Surprisingly, most people are assuming they build some kind of spacecraft and they spent millions of dollars and they built a spaceship and now they can't sell it and all this other stuff. No, if you look here, you can see it is stock-based compensation. I'm not a corporate lawyer, so I don't know, or accountant, so I don't know what that means. Some people have said what that means is that they're compensating some of their employees with stock, and so this is what they're going to owe those employees in the future. So this is not a real number. So this isn't typically what you would think of as $30 million in debt. So it might not be as big of a deal as we know. I'm still looking up information to get a very clear explanation of what that means and what it means for the company. But it's not what you're hearing out there for the most case. They didn't build a spaceship or anything, and now they're in a ton of debt. Some people have said this is kind of natural for startups. It's something to do with the estimation of the stock, but they do need to raise money to buttress that or something. I don't know. I don't know the details. But the biggest problem here is, even when I've brought up, well, it looks like it might be something related to compensation, people have pointed out, though, this sentence, which is, these factors raise doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern. And that is certainly unfortunate because, as much as people complain about To the Stars for reasons I do not agree with or even completely understand, this is a group of very serious people, one who work for the Pentagon, others who have worked for intelligence, scientists, people who have worked with Bigelow Aerospace at Skinwalker. These are people who are interested and even willing to risk their reputations to investigate this mysterious phenomena that you and I, we find so incredible. And they've brought a level of credibility to this subject that we've never had, never even close. I often reference this article that came out in the Washington Post that says UFOs are now a credible topic, and that's because of this rock star from Blink-182, Tom DeLonge. So we're in a great place. And here's the silver lining. If for some reason To the Stars doesn't work, and, it was a bit of an experiment in how do we create this company where we can fund UFO research, credible UFO research. And this experiment may not work out, but all of those individuals that are part of that organization are very, very invested in this topic and in the search for answers, including Mr. Lou Elizondo. I know this personally. I've talked with him. He's as passionate as any of you, and he's a intelligent. He's going to be at the UFO Congress next year, so be there. Come meet him. He's smart. He is nice. He is a very humble person. He's a great guy, and everybody who's met him has said this, and you will too if you meet him. His heart is in the right place, and I don't think he's going to be leaving this area of research anytime soon, even if To the Stars doesn't work out. So luckily we have this great group of people who will be around for a while. I hope To the Stars works out, and I hope this isn't as huge of an issue as it seems to be. But, a lot of us are scrambling to find out more about this, but you're going to hear a lot of wrong information about it as well. So I wanted to end on that, and I wanted to talk about that before we were done today because it's something that's going on out there. But that is all. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us on another episode of UFOs Live. And be sure to check out the podcast. We've got another podcast, of course, coming up early next week. Go to ufocongress.com and check out those videos that you can also find at the top of openminds.tv. All of the news that we talked about, you can find it at openminds.tv. And then you can find the Luis Elizondo interview video at the UFO Congress YouTube page. And of course, on the Open Minds YouTube page, you can find plenty of interviews with Nick Pope. And for Dirk, who wanted more about Dodi and Dulce, I've also got that video on there as well. And I have that under the featured videos playlist too, if you want to find that. Along with a video about Washington and the 1952 sightings. So thank you all for joining us. Until next week, adios, muchachos. Oh, and let me put on my fancy little end screen here. I like this because what I can do is, over there, put some videos up that you'll see. Check out these videos and be sure to subscribe by pushing that button down there. Peace out, peeps.